3, 2, 1, go. All right, I wanted to talk a little bit about lighting and coloring because it can be very confusing when you're starting out. So right now, my shapes look white. I know a lot of people have issues with just getting their shapes white and getting things white. So the only thing that I did for these boxes to make them look sharp is I went here and I just turned off smooth shading. If you have smooth shading, they'll probably look like this. But you can turn smooth shading off right here, and then they will look nice and sharp. So that's the only thing that I did. But these are just boxes, and this is just a sphere, and they're all white. Now, why do they look white? So this is the environment. So if you look in this little icon here, this is the environment. This is my own environment that I made in Procreate, and this is on my Gumroad, or if you've taken any of my Skillshare classes, it's free. Gumroad, I think it's like $1 or something. So this is my own environment, and I created this for specific reasons so I can have a specific look. But we'll talk more about that, about my specific one later. But the reason why I always use my specific environment is because when you use some of these environments, see how it changes? So the environment has so much to do with the lighting. This is ambient light, but you see how it changes everything so much? It's adding cools, it's adding darks, it's adding a lot. So it's hard to make things white. So that's the first thing. This is why I use my own environment. But you can also turn the environment off. But then once you turn the environment off, of course, everything is black. So let's go back to the environment. So that's the main important thing. If you want to get things white, first you have to pay attention to the environment. Also, of course, you have to pay attention to the color. You want it to be white. If it's any other color, it's not going to be white. But we're just talking about white at the moment. So I painted everything white. And of course, like I was saying before, my environment, you can change the rotation and you see how that nice round. So that's what I wanted. That's why I designed this particular environment. So the other thing that you want to do is when you color something, like when you color these, if I was going to make them a different color, what I would do is just grab everything and I would make them a neutral color. So of course, you know, when I'm sculpting, I use everything as matte cap when I'm sculpting. It's just easier to see. It disregards ambient light, disregards lighting. It's easier to sculpt this way. But when I want to color it, let's say I wanted to make this purple. What I would do first is take everything and I would make it a neutral color. So that would be like gray, you know, or doesn't really matter, just as long as it's neutral. I usually use like a terracotta type color. Like I usually use this color. The roughness is up about halfway, but that's okay. So I would probably do something like this, which is very close to the color of the matte cap, but it's just neutral. So why do I use a neutral color? I use a neutral color because when you're lighting, if it's white, then everything is going to look brighter. Your lights are going to look brighter because white, you know, bounces all the light. So it's going to look brighter. And if you use a neutral color, it's just the light's going to be a little bit more accurate. And then you can color it and then you can tweak the light. But if you have everything white, it's sort of like drawing on a white canvas. You can't do highlights. You can't do any sort of highlights because the white is always going to overshadow anything. You can't do anything brighter. So that's why when I draw and Procreate, I use like a sandy or like a not textured paper. You know, those like light brown paper. That's what I use because you can control the mids, you can control the darks, and you control the lights and the whites. So you have much more control. So that's why I make it all a neutral color. So now that I have that, I just turn off the environment. And I turn off the environment because if you have the ambient light, you can't see your lights clearly. And when you're doing lighting, you just want to see the lights. So then you go here and you add your first light. So I added the first light. The default is a sunlight. This sunlight just means that it doesn't matter where you actually put the physical gizmo for the light. The only thing that matters is how you twist it, how you move it around. So it's like a sun. You know, if it was going all day, the sun, that's what happens with us. And as humans, that's what the sun does. So you can move the gizmo around, but if you rotate it, that's when it'll make a difference with the sunlight, which is great. I always use it. And I usually like, if you have your setup position and you add it, it'll normally be in this direction and it'll kind of be like this, and it actually looks really good. So usually I don't have to rotate it. The only thing I do is turn the intensity up to about 2. So I do around 2. That gives it that brightness, and then you can keep working from there. So we still have, we just have one light, and we don't have our environment on. I'm going to rename this key, because this is the key light. This is the main light. This will be the brightest light in the scene. So next, I copy it, and, or you can just, it doesn't matter, you can add it like a new light if you want. But I like to, let's make this a spotlight just to show a different kind of light. So a spotlight is different. It's just controlled by this cone, and wherever the cone is pointing is where the light is. I'm going to save this position so we can come back to it. So I'm just going to go here, add view. I'll just rename it 1. So now our view is saved. So we'll go back to the light, which we're going to name rim. So this is going to be a rim light, and we'll bring it back here. Oops. And let's just rotate it so it's like pointing. Let's go back to our view. Okay, so we need to move it back here, and then we want to just point it so we have a nice rim light on some of these shapes. Okay, well, I can see it on the sphere, and that's good enough for me. Maybe you can make it a little bit brighter. See that nice rim light? And you probably could, like if I wanted to get it on all the other shapes, it's probably better to use a sunlight, because a sunlight is kind of all encompassing. But I don't really see it on the edges of the, the square, so that's okay. So anyway, the rim light is always back. It just makes a nice like shadow there. And there's some other lights you can do, but we're not going to pay attention to that yet. So now we have those lights. So let's go ahead and turn back on the environment. But you see that's really bright. So we'll turn it down, because I just want to use the environment as sort of like a fill light. A fill light is just going to fill in. See this really black, unnatural looking shadow? We're just going to fill that in. So it still looks like a shadow, but you're still seeing the light. So something like this. And actually, I might turn on post-process too. Let's turn off depth of field. I might turn on post-process because the lighting is going to look a little bit different. So once I have the lighting set, then I might turn on post-process so I can just see what I'm working with. And then I would go back to each of these, and maybe I would change them white if I want them to be glossy or not glossy. I would just paint all these white, and see, they look nice and white. The light is hitting them well. And this, let's say, I think I wanted to make it like a lilac color. Maybe we'll make it glossy, so we still have that nice shine on it. So that's pretty much how I would do my lighting, and this is how I would color things if I want things to look right. You just have to pay attention to the environment, because again, if I change the environment, it's going to change a lot of the colors, you know, especially some of these drastic ones. And they all actually look pretty white, which means I did a good job setting my lighting and stuff like that. So yeah. Also, another thing is you have to pay attention to the tone of your light. So if you put it warm, it's going to look yellow from the warm light. And if you want it cool, then you have to have blue, like that. So, but one of the keys is sometimes it's nice to have a warmer light on one side and a cool light on the other side. So you can kind of play around with that a little bit. But now that we did that, this actually looks a little cool. So I might go to the yellow and just make it a little warm, tad bit warm, and just make it look cool. The background is slightly blue. So all of that stuff plays a role in it. I think that's about it. The only other thing that I might do to make this look better and make it look more dynamic is change it to subsurface. You know how I love subsurface, and I like to change, usually I'll change all my everything to subsurface. I just think it looks cool, I guess. No other way to put it, really. And I might go to the rim light, and then I might increase it so you can kind of see through, and it just gives it like a cool hue, makes it look kind of see-through, and then just play around with it and see what you get. And you can add some other lights and stuff like that. But that's pretty much it. Hopefully that was helpful. And again, if you want this to be brighter, this from the environment, because the environment, whatever this is, will reflect on here. If I wanted that to be brighter, I can play with the exposure, but that will make everything brighter. So you can do that. That's one way. But also you can, let's see, what's the other thing that I wanted to show you? If I tap on the sphere, oh yeah, so you tap on the sphere and you have the material where we set the subsurface, you can change the reflectance. See the reflectance? So you can bring that up too. So that's another way to add a little more, you know, to your scene. So let's hit select. I feel like it's the only thing that will allow me to view everything without all these things on the screen. Yeah, so that's pretty much how I would do it. That's how I do my lighting. That's how I go about thinking about it. Hopefully this was helpful. Let me know. Keep drawing, keep sculpting. I'll see you all in the next video. This seems like a video game. Why is this bright? Oh, is that my... That's the light. My ceiling light.